Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of Closet Check. If you're new around these parts, then Closet Check is where I highlight different pieces and collections for my closet. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below, and you can go ahead and hit the notification bell to get notified of new videos that I post. For those of you who are returning, welcome back and Happy New Year. I wanted to do something pretty special to kick off 2022. We recently unloaded a bunch of stuff from our old storage unit and got everything into the house here, and so finally I was able to get back some of these things that were hiding away in that storage unit for a while. What we're basically going through today is a little bit of an evolution, if you will, of Nike's self-lacing sneakers. Starting from the very beginning with the Nike Mag, which I'm sure most of you are most interested in, and all of the things about that. And then going into the very first hyperadapt, which was their first retail shoe that Nike made that was self-lacing. And then one of the more recent ones from 2020, which is the Adapt BB 2.0. Not only am I just a huge fan of Nike in terms of their shoes and their clothes, etc., but I'm also a massive fan of Back to the Future. So for me personally, it's been sort of fun over the years to see this evolution as it's been going and as it actually continues into the future from here. So with that, let's go ahead and get into each one of these. So we'll get started with what I personally consider, and I think many people out there consider to be the true holy grail of all sneakers, which is the Nike Mag. In case you've been living under a rock, the Nike Mag was created for Back to the Future 2 as sort of the futuristic sneaker that Marty McFly was going to put on as part of his outfit. So this particular one that I have here is from the 2011 release, and so they went ahead and ahead of 2015, which was the year in Back to the Future 2 where Marty went into the future to actually put these on. They went ahead and did an early version of the shoe before everything was truly ready about it. So this version does not actually auto-lace, but it is one of only 1,500 shoes that they made in 2011. And they actually put all the proceeds from the sale of those shoes towards the Parkinson's Foundation. So this shoe actually came in this massive box from Nike, and actually has a sticker here that says UPS Hill Valley, California. Obviously Hill Valley being the fictional city that Back to the Future takes place in. But then also the fact that this box has another box inside of it. Actually has all these little protectors for the corners. You can sort of see in here what I'm talking about. So it's one huge box with another box inside with these protectors. And then it was inside of this inner box that the big yellow shoebox actually came in. So the massive yellow box is absolutely amazing. It has a size tag that's on the front corner there. It says magnetic anti-gravity, and it sort of has the signatures of Tiffany Veers and Tinker Hatfield on the front. The flap in the front is a magnetic closure, and then you got the shoes that are inside. So still have had these. Again, these are size 10. They only made them in whole sizes, and so I had gotten, my personal size for them, and got both shoes. And something that I'm going to be going through with the sort of evolution between these different models that we have here today is the different ways that they charge. And so this one, one of the very first Nike shoes to ever have any sort of charging mechanism. That just sort of had a regular AC adapter that then had these two little plugs to go directly into the back side of each of the shoes to be able to charge them. Now again, as I mentioned, these are not actually self-lacing, and so I would have loved if the first version that came out was self-lacing, but they weren't. They're just elastic pieces that are on the front here, but they do at least light up, and thankfully, even though these are sort of well over 10 years old, the charging and light up mechanism still does work. So yeah, now about how I got my hands on these. So actually, I felt like the way that they handled this release was absolutely perfect. Again, there were 1,500 pairs, which if you think about how many shoes get produced now, even for a limited release, that's a very small number. But the way that they did the release was sort of interesting. Again, this was all to be able to raise money for the Parkinson's Foundation, and so the way that they did it was they didn't set a retail value for these shoes. They just put them all up on eBay. And it was an interesting approach that they did, because for all 1,500 pairs, they didn't just put them all up at the same time. They actually spaced them out over the course of almost a week or so. At the very beginning of the week, they went for extremely high because, you know, people were so excited about it, they wanted to make sure that they got them, and they bid those up to crazy amounts. I stepped back and I basically just watched the way that the sales were going over time, and started to notice a couple of things. That as we got into the middle of the week, it felt like prices were actually dropping. So that's when I actually went in and I grabbed these and won these ones at auction during that time. At the very end of the week, as people realized, wait, this is now my last chance to be able to get these shoes, then the prices for them sort of skyrocketed back up. And so again, it was really interesting, you know, peaks and valleys in terms of how the pricing went through. I think I paid a little over $3,000 for these off of the eBay auction, which now if you actually look at how much these go for brand new on the secondary market, it's absolutely insane. I obviously thought at that time that spending $3,000 on a shoe was also equally insane, but for me personally, it was, you know, the fact that, again, I'm a huge Nike fan, huge Back to the Future fan, and this was the first time that they were actually making these and making them available. All right, we might as well get these things on, huh? So they have the Velcro strap that's on the front here. Now, I have actually found that in order for me to wear them properly, I can't actually tighten them down. And so I have to basically keep them almost as loose as I possibly can without them flying out. Instead of a regular shoe tree, it just has a sort of vertical cardboard piece that's here. This is always a little bit of a scary part because, you know, it is such a valuable shoe, but you know, it's built fairly well. Just again, I just have to make sure that I keep the strap a little bit loose there, just in terms of how I like it to fit. And honestly, they are pretty comfortable. You know, the materials on them are super light. It's, you know, it's obviously not meant for like active regular wear, although obviously some people have gone out and have done crazy things in them over the years. But for me personally, you know, I have worn them before in a few different situations, but it's the kind of thing where, again, I'm just super stoked to be able to have them as part of my overall collection for, you know, all the things that it represents, and they're just so cool. So very glad to have them, and actually very glad to have this back out of storage now so that I can properly enjoy it again. And just in case you're wondering, no, there is no way in hell that I will ever sell these. These will always be part of my collection. Next up, we have the very first retail auto-lacing sneaker from Nike, the hyperadapt 1.0. And these released in 2016, and when I saw that they were coming out and saw the details, I got so stoked. Again, you know, with the 2011 mags, with them not being auto-lacing, and with it being basically impossible to have gotten the 2015 version that did actually auto-lace, I was so stoked to see this come out. So the way that they handled the release for these was sort of interesting. This was one of the first times that they used the mobile app to make it so you had to actually get a reservation to be able to buy these. And so I was able to snag the very first reservation at Nike in San Francisco to be able to get these, and so I was the first person in SF to be able to pick up auto-lacing sneakers from Nike. Sort of similar to the mags, this has a comically large box. It was a cool thing that they did for this first release where, you know, they made this tote bag that came with it, and then this box that fits very tightly inside of it. This over here. So then the box for the hyperadapt has a logo that's on the side here, and then the size tag for it here. So my biggest regret with these shoes is that when I got them, it was around the time that I was, for whatever reason, convinced that I was a true 9.5 for sneakers. Although I know now I'm more of a true size 10 for sneakers with a little bit of a wider foot. And I didn't realize a few things that I'll go through about auto lacing sneakers in particular with their fit that I really would have wanted to have gotten a bigger size, but I had to make the reservation for one single size, and that was the only one that they were going to be able to give me. And when I tried them on at the store, it was great. It was only later when I was actually wearing them out that I realized I really should have gotten a bigger size. But that being said, take out the outer box. Again, sort of just like comical levels of Nike packaging, which, you know, I guess in some ways is pretty cool that it is so special, but it has just made these, you know, sort of a bit unwieldy over the years to be able to manage. And so it's got the hyperadapt logo on the main part of the box here, and we will go ahead and open this up. So the shoes are sitting inside of this in a kind of similar way to how the mags were handled. You know, in terms of all the foam that's in here and having the shoes, you know, sort of out in kind of the open here. As I mentioned, there's sort of an ongoing evolution of not only the self-lacing technology, but also the way that charging for these shoes has been handled. And so these ones came with these kind of silly magnetic pucks, and the main reason that I say it's silly, well, you know, it's obviously just a standard charging situation at this end, is that these connect to actually the bottoms of each of these shoes. A little bit of a magnetic bit there. But then it's just a little silly because the puck sort of goes beyond the bottom of the shoe. And so it means it's not really, like when you put it down, if you try to put it down, you know, with the sole down, it doesn't really sit properly because the puck kind of keeps it sort of propped up to a side. And maybe you're supposed to just keep them on their side or something, but sort of a funny situation that they ended up with. Other than that, I mean, these shoes are just so cool. The designs of them, the colors that they chose for the first version that they put out, I thought was absolutely perfect. And we'll go ahead and put them on and get the self-lacing to kick in here. Hopefully it still works after all these years. Yep, there we go. There we go. Still actually remembers the sort of preset that I had from way back when I first programmed it. There we go. So yeah, actual self-lacing sneakers. They sort of light up. The lights stay on for a little bit as you wear them, but I think they go off after a little while, so it doesn't just constantly drain the battery. They are, you know, when I first put them on at the store, and even right now as I'm wearing them, they do feel super comfortable, but as I said, as I've sort of figured out after wearing them for longer periods of time, especially for somebody like me that has a little bit of a wider foot, the way that these sort of clamp down, it makes it actually a bit uncomfortable over time. And so, not to mention the fact that the toe box itself is a little bit on the narrower side. But overall, again, I was just super excited to be able to get the very first retail self-lacing shoe from Nike. The last thing that I'll mention about these is an ongoing discussion that there's been about the self-lacing sneakers that Nike has put out and their price. And so these were very expensive. Even their retail price, I believe it was very close to $800 for retail. And so, you know, a lot of people have gone up and said, oh, this is just like way too much. Like, well, why would they even price something at that? For me personally, it's sort of just the recognition that Nike is they're just trying to charge ahead. You know, nobody right now might actually need self-lacing sneakers, but to be able to get ahead of the technology and to be able to try things out like this and to be able to continuously put out these products, learn from them, and continue to develop them over time. Who knows, we might actually get to a point where the vast majority of shoes actually do have self-lacing technology in them. And so, again, it's one of those things where, you know, for me personally as a collector, it's obviously a tough pill to swallow if you're paying about that much for retail for a pair of shoes. But again, for me, just the history of it and sort of the technology behind it and how this was, again, the very first one for them to put out, that's sort of why I kind of knew I had to have it. And we will just round things out here with the last pair as part of this sort of evolution that I have, the 2020 Adapt BB 2.0. Box is still comically large as well, but it is at least smaller than the other two that we've gone through. And you know, going through this one now, I think is what makes it very clear the kind of evolution that Nike's been doing over the years as they've been able to continue to develop this technology in these shoes. So we start to get to a little bit more of a standard box situation. You know, this actually finally has tissue paper versus the other ones that is sort of pure foam. But it does have some extra parts in here for, you know, the charging situation. So we'll go ahead and get these out. And I'll actually go ahead and talk about the charger since we've been talking about them for all the others as well. So as with any technology, you know, if you keep charging ahead and you keep making new product, you figure out better ways to handle things. And so this is the best charging situation that, you know, that they have been able to make to date. And so instead of, you know, having to take little plugs and plug them into the back of the shoe, or to take, as we saw with the hyperadapts, the little magnetic pucks and like put those under the shoe and have it sort of not be able to stand properly, this is just a wireless charging stand that when you put the shoes directly on top of them, it just charges wirelessly. So kind of a perfect, again, evolution that you can really see over time of how they've been able to, you know, continue to push the envelope ahead. Now I do have two pairs of these, the first one that they put out, and then also picked up the Nike Mag version, and so I felt it was only proper to go ahead and pull out this particular pair for this video. Other than even just the charger, it's just so clear how they've been making technological advancements over the years around the self-lacing technology. I didn't quite point it out for the hyperadapts, but the buttons were actually kind of hard to figure out, you know, where they were and to press them. They updated on these to just put, you know, two huge buttons on the side, and they've actually been even updating the software for these over the years, which I had no idea because, you know, these have sort of been sitting in storage for a little bit. But I was able to actually update these to the latest firmware where you have different sort of light settings on them. So what I went ahead and did is, you know, everything now with these is run through the Nike Adapt app, and I updated the firmware to be able to turn on the Nike Mag light settings. It's basically just lighting up the little dots on the buttons there to kind of go through and cycle through the different lights that are on the mag itself. And so kind of, you know, a perfect combination of things for them. So for these ones in terms of sizing, like I mentioned, for the hyperadapts, I thought I was a true 9.5. And so I went with what my true size was for them, even with my wider feet. Now I know that I'm a much more true size 10 when it comes to Nike. And what I did for these is I actually sized these up to a 10.5. That way it gives me enough width around the toe box to be able to be comfortable. And then almost more importantly, to be able to let the auto lacing work a little bit harder to be able to actually, you know, fit better around my foot. And so, you know, just because of the way that it tightens down, it does so in a way that, you know, if you were really tightening your shoes, you know, manually with laces, you know, if you try to pull them as tight as possible, that's kind of the feeling that it goes through when it does the auto lacing piece. And so because of that, with me actually sizing up to the 10.5, it's made these fit so much better and have them be really comfortable. So I think I have the auto lacing piece turned on, so we'll see if it does kick in. One on. There we go. Tighten that down. And we'll get the other one on here. Come on. There we go. Sweet. So yeah, like having these is, to me, just super cool to have. You know, updated technology, but, you know, with all of the callbacks to the original Nike Mag in terms of the colorway, the speckled midsole, the colors. You know, it even has a little bits of color that are up on the next to the toe there, the light up situation that it has, and again, just a much more comfortable shoe with the sizing that I went for on these versus my hyperadapts. One of the coolest things about these that I had just learned as I was getting them reset up again is they've added over time different gestures. And so now you can actually kick off your shoes. So if you just do this, then that automatically loosens each shoe. See if this one works. There we go. It's just one of those things where it's so clear that they're continuing to innovate. They have a team that is just continuously chipping away at these, building new versions going into the future, and just so cool to have part of this technology as it continues to evolve over the years. So that just about does it for this video. Thanks for coming along this sort of journey of self-lacing sneakers from Nike with me. You hopefully tell just how much of a fan I am of all of this and just how awesome it is to have these as part of my collection. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up if you like this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll catch you next time.